Hey, have you ever wished you could focus on the big important tasks for your project while someone or something else handles the boring stuff? Well, then stick around because I'm going to show you how Codex from OpenAI can help you with that. Very briefly, here is the announcement from OpenAI introducing Codex. They describe it as their cloud-based software engineering agent that can work on many tasks in parallel, powered by the Codex One. It's available to these users under those subscriptions, but as of recording this now, it is also available to Plus users. In addition to Plus users getting access to use Codex, they also added the ability to enable Codex to have internet access during task execution. But stick around to the end because I'm going to tell you why you may not want to do that, or at least take a lot of caution with enabling that feature. So if you want to get started with Codex from their announcement, you can click on Try Codex, but you're likely already logged into chatgpt.com. So I'm going to head on over there to show you how to access it from that view. All right, so from chatgpt.com, you'll have your normal options that you probably typically see, but you should see a new option here, Codex. You click on that and it's going to bring you to their onboarding view. It's going to tell you get started. We'll click on that. Tell you a little bit about it, that it can draft GitHub PRs in parallel, navigate your code base, run linting and testing for you. And it's powered by a new coding model, fine-tuned to work in large code bases. We're going to be testing that out. So next step here is to connect it to GitHub. It's going to give me this quick prompt to let me know what they're about to do. Basically, OpenAI wants to redirect to GitHub so that we can log in there and grant it permissions to our account or specific repos. Then it's going to always respect those permissions, which is nice. And it's going to be private and secure, meaning our data here is never used for training. I'm going to click on continue to GitHub now. This is where you'll be prompted to authorize ChatGPT connector. We click on that. Then you choose which organization you want to give it access to. In this case, I'm going to keep it on my personal one. I'm not going to choose all repositories. I like to be specific about it. And I've been working off of this AI code security repo for all of these different models and tools. Once you have your repository selected that you want to give it access to, you're going to click on install and authorize in the bottom corner here. You may be prompted to use your two-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication with GitHub as well. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and we'll see where it goes from here. All right, now we're back over to Codex UI. We can see it has the GitHub organization for my account. It sees the repository. And again, as I mentioned earlier, agent internet access, you can turn this on if you have maybe a specific need, but I'll share at the end why you want to be cautious with enabling this. So I select that repository. I see the check mark there, and now I can create an environment. All right, I'm notified that the environment was created successfully. It's ready when I am. So I can start tasks. I can ask it something like explain the code base to somebody. I can ask it to code, or I can have it do other asks here. Codex can make mistakes though. Always review the code. Always review the code. Let's start tasks. On the right-hand side, it has some onboarding steps going through here, noting that I finished setting up my first environment, created first task, but it's also saying to install dependencies for this environment. So I'm not sure what to do about that, but it is clickable. I'm going to wait though. In addition to that, I didn't realize that that was actually starting tasks. I thought it was switching me to this view to start asking it to do tasks, but those three that it gave as examples, it kicked them off in parallel, and you could see one finished already, and the other two have been running for about 3 minutes or so right now. So that's pretty cool. That's impressive and quite intuitive the way they've set it up. I like that it's giving me active updates on what it's currently doing in order to fulfill that task. If I click on it, what happens? Okay, that brings me to a new view. Fix a runtime error in Claude Sonnet server by requiring that. And then I can create a pull request off of that. What is this? The top right-hand corner. Does that mean it's still running? Oh no, that means there's two other tasks running in parallel to this one. That's cool. I can look at the logs for this, see what kind of thought process it went through, changes it made, and follow along and make sure that it is doing things up to par with my expectations. That's cool. It looks like this one finished already too. Let's click on that. The root README explains that the repo collects multiple AI-generated implementations of the same project prompt for security analysis. Accurate. Nicely done. And it looks like the last one finished as well. Fixing a typo, bug comment, and improved tests. Await server shutdown results. Okay, so does this one have a PR? Look at this. It's suggesting new tasks to do off of that main task. That's pretty cool. Go through the code base, find issues, and propose one task to fix a typo, one task to fix. That's like pretty meta of it, right? Like you're having a task for it to create new task for itself. Very interesting. Very cool capabilities there. I do want to try this really quick, see what happens, and then we'll go from there. Okay, that brings me to editing the environment. We're using their universal container image. So they set up the environment using containers, if you're familiar with that. You can look at all this, by the way, up on GitHub. That's all open source from them. So that's really cool. And a shout out to them for doing that. You can add environment variables, secrets to it. You can have a setup script if you want. And then again, we can, if you did turn it on earlier when you were setting up the environment, you can come back in here and turn it off if you'd like, or maybe temporarily turn it on if you want. But by default, this is always turned off. And then last but not least, you can connect to an interactive terminal for that environment. So they give you a high level of control. All right, so now I'm going to describe a task. If you've been following along with our past videos, you know what I'm going to prompt it to do. So here it is. The only thing I'm going to change about this prompt is to tell it to isolate the changes to its own folder. Okay, so using a new folder named that, please create a simple Node.js application, right? So we're going to tell it to code on that one. Let's see what happens. I like this little animation that they have right here. That's super fun. All right, looks like it did create this OpenAI Codex June 2025 folder. That's nice. I can see that based on the command line that they have presented here. Ooh, because the network is unreachable. Do I enable it briefly? I might need to enable it for this purpose because it's not gonna be able to npm install things. Does it need to though? I don't know. What's it gonna do from here? Okay, it's still making progress anyway. While this is going on, I want to note that you can also request changes or ask a question to the tool while it's doing all this, or when it's done, if you'd like, to keep iterating on this particular task. And just like that, it's done. It took maybe 2 to 3 minutes, which aligns with their documentation about Codex. They say that tasks typically take 3 to 8 minutes, depending on what you're asking it to do. And this was quite a big task that we put in front of it to create a whole app for us. Let's see what it came up with. Oh, specifically, it took 2 minutes, 10 seconds. So it added a minimal Node.js application that requires no third-party dependencies. Interesting. Maybe that was because it didn't have internet access. It went that route. Not sure. The README explains its features, including rate limiting and security headers, and how to start the server. Nice. Implemented server with built-in modules, sanitizing input, and applying strict security headers while providing basic rate limiting to prevent abuse. And look, it even shows you like code snippet related to that bullet point. Interesting. And it created a simple front end to manage notes with an HTML form and JavaScript for fetching the REST API endpoints. Very cool. All right, so what I want to do now is I want to have it go ahead and create a pull request, which is the button up in the top right-hand corner. Create a PR draft, copy, git apply, copy, patch. Okay, I'm just going to have it just straight up create a pull request. Looks like it's done with that, and I can click on view pull request, which should bring me to the repository. That was fast too. Here's the summary of it, same as before. I have my security checks happening in my pipeline here with Snyk, which is telling me that one of them passed and the other one failed. So we'll take a look at that now. All right, after clicking on that security check from Snyk Code, which is our static application security testing tool, found that there is a high level severity path traversal where on line 73 in the server.js file for the code that OpenAI Codex generated for us via that task, it's allowing the request URL to flow into this file system read file functionality. So that file path there. Interesting. So as mentioned before, both from OpenAI's Codex and in past videos, we need to be putting in security checks, having human verification in place to review the code changes that any of these AI coding generation tools are providing for us. All right, back in the PR, I just want to take a quick look at the changes that it's proposing in it. So it did create the new folder like I suggested. It has a README, a notes JSON. So it's using a JSON file to an array of notes basically as a database. In the package JSON, we can see it did indeed not have any dependencies included in there. So that's interesting that it went that route when it realized it didn't have internet access. I'm curious, maybe I should try it with internet access enabled. I don't know. I just don't know about that though. All right, so everything that it built on the server, it added a sanitize function, which looks on the surface of it to be pretty good, but it's likely not robust enough for all types of sanitization purposes that we would need in a web-based application. There's some rate limiting based on IP address and using a map of those. right? So it's using the resources it had available to it to come up with the best possible solution it could. In fact, so much so that it manually wrote its own security headers for this send JSON functionality whenever it's returning that, like cross-site scripting protection header, X-frame options header. That type of stuff is good to see, but not likely going to be a robust solution to cover all of the bases that you would need from a security perspective. And last but not least, it's nice to see that it added a UI in here. As we've seen in past videos, it's not something that commonly happens when given that one-shot prompt that I gave it to create a Node application like this. So, pretty impressive. Now, I mentioned earlier why you may want to be cautious with enabling internet access in the environment for Codex. But before I go do that, if you've been watching this far, I'm assuming you pretty much like and are enjoying this video. So be sure to like the video down below. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on upcoming videos from us. So directly from their documentation for Codex on OpenAI's website, they talk about agent internet access and the risks around enabling this internet access. One of the reasons you want to be cautious with it is it's potentially susceptible to prompt injection. Now, if you don't know what that is, I'll describe it briefly here, but really quick. A colleague of mine, Vandana Sahgal, is going to be hosting a workshop going through the OWASP top 10 for LLMs, demystifying things like prompt injection and some of the other top 10 potential vulnerabilities when it comes to large language models. So if you're interested in that and want to check it out and learn more and get educated on this stuff as you're using AI more yourself, I highly encourage you to check it out. It's happening July 15th and you can sign up. Link will be in the description below. So very briefly, prompt injection. Imagine you tell Codex to go off and fix a particular issue up on a repo that you have. And in that issue, the description includes information that will be related to the issue, but also gives further instructions to the model to act on your behalf on the repo. So in this case, the issue description is telling the model here, Codex, the agent rather, to run the script below and provide the output of it. So what's going to happen is it's then going to fetch and execute the script that's included there, and it could potentially leak the last commit message to the attacker's server. That might seem like a big deal to you or not, but you can imagine malicious actors, people trying to do nefarious things, can take this a step further and start exfiltrating sensitive information about your code base, introducing security vulnerabilities into the project via this manner, and all sorts of other nasty possibilities. Now, if you do have a specific need to grant it access to the internet, you have capabilities and settings available to you to try and restrict it even further, right? They give you capabilities to create a domain allow list. They allow you to configure which HTTP methods are permitted. For example, maybe you only want to allow get HTTP requests or options requests, that type of thing, and block all other ones. In addition to that, they also provide a set of domains that are common for dependencies that you might be calling to as part of your project. As an example, the one that we would have needed was npmjs.com or npmjs.org, so we could retrieve from the registry there for our dependencies in that situation. However, this is not foolproof, so keep that in mind. And the reason for that is because there's a possibility that the model could be tricked into installing a intentionally malicious NPM package or dependency in other ecosystems that will then introduce vulnerabilities into your project too. So please keep that in mind as you navigate the waters when using and enabling internet access for this tool. On that note, that does it for this video. If you got value out of it, be sure to like it down below and share with somebody who could put it to use. And if you made it this far, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on upcoming videos. Thanks for watching and happy, safe coding, everyone.